Well, people that were around me that were doing the jobs that I would love to do, they were just much better than I was. And so, but I hadn't really discovered the importance of the word yet. If I had just added yet on the end of that sentence, I'm not talented enough yet.
Yet.
That makes all the difference in the world. And that's the thing that I really want to get out to. Anytime we say something about ourselves that we're a not enough, whatever, it's like you might be right now, but put yet on the end of that sentence.
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations with entrepreneurs who started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm your host, Dr. Rebecca White, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join me today. Today's guest was so much fun to talk to, and he's a brilliant example of reinvention, artistry, and mentorship in action. I know you're going to love this story. Today, I have as a guest Tim Packer. He's a celebrated Canadian artist, creative business mentor, and a former police detective who made the bold decision to walk away from the badge and a stable government career to follow a lifelong dream. And yes, his wife was one of the key people that supported him in this journey. And that decision that he and his wife made paid off in extraordinary ways. Today, Tim has a thriving multi-million-dollar art business, selling his original paintings, publishing his own prints, and running a highly successful online art academy that's helped thousands of artists master both their craft and their business. But Tim's success wasn't just about talent. It was about learning all along the way. He spent years studying and absorbing everything he could about what makes not only great art, but a great art business. That dedication to growth and scale, combined with a refusal to believe the myth that artists can't make a living, is what shaped the thriving brand that he leads today. Now he's paying it forward through the Tim Packer Art Academy, his upcoming book, You Can Sell Art, and his viral video content. Through all of that, Tim is demystifying success in the creative world, offering practical tools, honest insights, and a roadmap for artists who are ready to treat their passion like a profession. But you don't have to be an artist to learn from today's conversation. We're going to be talking about a lot of the important things that entrepreneurs need to know, including the mindset that it takes to succeed. And that brings us to today's mindset moment. Success often begins by finding someone who's done what you want to do and learning from them. Mentorship doesn't have to be formal. It can be a teacher. It can be a podcast, a book, or someone whose journey helps you see what's possible. Tim reminds us that the road to mastery is rarely a solo endeavor. When we surround ourselves with models, we move forward with more clarity, more confidence, and more courage. But before we jump into the episode, I want to remind you about something new and exciting in our entrepreneurial mindset toolbox. We've currently launched InFactor Plus, a new platform designed to help you build your entrepreneurial intelligence. As a member, you'll be able to explore insights from hundreds of entrepreneurs, discover the mindsets behind their success, and apply those lessons to your own journey. I can't wait for you to explore it. And you can find it at my website. That's Dr. Rebecca White, drRebeccaWhite.com. But now let's jump into this insightful, energizing conversation with artist and entrepreneur, Tim Packer. Hey, Tim, thank you for joining me today on the In Factor.
Thank you for having me, Rebecca. It's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. Before we started recording, I mentioned to you that my mom is an artist. And so I grew up in that family, and I actually learned the entrepreneurial mindset from her. And so much of the work I do has been inspired by her. She was sort of, I guess you'd call her a Renaissance woman, Much like you, she had a slash career, you might call it today. And I'm really excited to hear your story. I think you were a police officer at one time. I know you're Canadian and you're an artist and you have a really interesting story. So could you tell our audience a little bit about how you went from police officer and into the world of art and, what got you there and how did you get there?
Okay, well, it started with art. I decided when
Okay.
I was a little kid that I wanted to be an artist, and so I took art in high school, studied, and at that time, the conventional wisdom, if you want to make a living as an artist, you really had to be a commercial artist or what we call a graphic designer now. So I took graphic design in college, came out ready to take on the world, and I was going to be a top-notch illustrator. And what it turned out was like for 3 years out of college, I was in an entry level, very uninspiring, unsatisfying jobs, got laid off of all three, and was surrounded by people who just had much more talent than I did at that time. And I just came to the realization that I wasn't talented enough to be an artist. And I started looking for a plan B, and the Toronto Police Force was hiring. And so I put in an application. I did that. I found that was a job I really, really enjoyed and I was good at, but I didn't love it. I always loved art. But I just made the decision. I just wasn't talented enough. And then when I was in my 30s, a couple of things happened. That was for the first time I was introduced to the whole idea of the growth mindset, that your
Yeah.
talent is not fixed. It's not something you're born with. It's something you develop. It's just the sum total of your skill, knowledge, experience, and creativity, and that you could improve all of them. And so that got me thinking again about art. So I started applying myself in art. And then at the same time, too, another police officer who was a good friend of mine was killed in the line of duty. And that just really brought home to me that like now was the only time that I had. My plan was maybe when I retired, I might get back to art. But at the time, I wasn't really painting at all. And so those two things just really motivated me to like, okay, now is the time to get back. And I still didn't really believe the whole growth mindset, but I thought, what if they're right? So I'm going to live my life as though I believe it for a year. And so that meant, scheduling painting time, painting 3 times a week, really focusing on learning the skills and the concepts that I knew were kind of weaknesses. And an amazing thing happened. Within a year, I'd improved a lot. And I was getting into juried shows. I was starting to win awards. And then within 3 years of that, my wife and I had the conversation where she said, okay, we have to have a conversation, not about if you leave the police force, but when to do this full time. And the neat thing about that is she was a banker. I'm the dreamer. She's the practical one. But she said, this is not about you being fulfilled. She said, this is what I think might be in the best long-term financial interests of our family. And I think with everything you've accomplished up until that time, I've been painting really seriously for about 5 years while I was still in the police force. She said, I think this might be in our best interest. And it was 1999. So like new millennium coming, what a time for a change. But she just said to me, if you quit your job and cash in your pension, you just need to promise me that if it ever becomes clear that this is not in our best financial interests, put on a suit and get a job, because we had 2 young boys at the time. And so I said, yes. And at the time I was a detective in the commercial crime unit. So I was investigating, frauds over $2 million. I'd been given a lot of training in, computer crime as well from the RCMP college. So I knew I had a skill set that if this all just went into the ditch, I could get a job in the private sector. Luckily, I mean, it wasn't a smooth journey, but within about 5 years, I kind of discovered the voice that has kind of led me to where I am now. And then I had a very, very successful career as an artist, selling in galleries. And then it was initially picked up by Mill Pond Press, one of the world's largest fine art publishers, and they were doing prints of my work. And then I realized, the first year that they handled me, they did 100,000 in sales of my work, and I got $5,000 out of that. And I just thought that's probably not the best model. And at the same time, the technology was changing. My dad was a head pressman at one of the top print shops in Toronto, and I actually used to work there in the summer. And I knew back then it took several $1,000,000 worth of equipment and probably 10 or 15 skilled tradespeople to do prints. Whereas now the technology was getting to the point for $1,000, you could do it all yourself and better quality. So then I invested in the equipment, started self-publishing. Then I got into social media. And that led to a lot of selling direct to clients. And so that was a website with e-commerce. And then I decided that in 2015, I was at a show in Toronto, one of my shows, that it was just like the TV or movie style kind of, an artist total success moment, right? It was a show where people were lined up down the street waiting for the gallery to open. There was live music playing, waiters walking around with trays of drinks. And, when the doors opened, people came in, red dots were going up. And I realized, this was at the end of the year, I realized that I was going to do over $250,000 in sales, not in sales, in earnings from my art. And then I had a weird feeling come over me, which was responsibility, that, I wasn't special. I was never the best in art in any class I was in, but I knew what I had done to get there. And I was pretty sure I could help other artists get there too. So that led to me starting a YouTube channel to share what I learned. And then in 2020, decided to start my online art academy. And then now I actually have my book coming out. So now the main focus of my mission now is not just to crank out more paintings and make more money, but is to help other artists who share that same dream actually get there and get there faster.
Wow. Wow. What a story. What a story. I love that. There's so much in there I want to talk about.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Let's go all the way back to, you became an artist in the way that you thought you should become an artist originally in graphic design. And you decided you didn't have the talent. And I wonder how many people go out and they start in a career that they think is the career that they were expecting, or related to it. And it's not quite, so they give up on it.
Yep.
I mean, what kind of signals did you get that you weren't talented enough?
Well, people that were around me that were doing the jobs that I would love to do, they were just much better than I was. And so, but I hadn't really discovered the importance of the word yet. If I had just added yet on the end of that sentence, I'm not talented enough yet. That makes all the difference in the world. And that's the thing that I really want to get out to. Anytime we say something about ourselves that we're a not enough, whatever, it's like, you might be right now, but put yet on the end of that sentence. And because talent, again, that whole idea that talent is somehow fixed is something that most people believe, and even I grew up with my parents telling me we could do anything we wanted if we were willing to work hard enough at it. Yet we tend to think sometimes, especially in the creative arts, that no, it's not just about hard work, right? There's some magic dust that got sprinkled on those people who were successful. But it's just not true. And so, yeah, now I look at everything that I've done since in my career, it's kind of like with the changing in technology and everything else that's going on in the world, that there's an opportunity that I think might be good for the business. It's like, well, I know I'm horrible at that and I don't know anything about that yet. And so it's like, okay, let me learn about it. And if it makes sense, then let's put it into practice. And that's why, I branched out into kind of multiple streams of income, but just realizing that the ability to learn is so real and so easy today with the internet.
Do you believe that most people want to create?
Yes.
That there's something in all of us that we want to create something?
Most people, I mean, there are some people I've met that just say, I don't have it. Like, they don't even have an urge or a desire. But I found that most people either would love to be able to play the guitar or sing or paint or create pottery or write or make movies or videos or whatever, or bake or cook. I think it's an innate human desire to be creative. And we tend to get that beat out of us not literally, but as kids, figuratively, that's just not practical. Right? It's just not practical to make a living.
True. And I think it's true in schools. I've been an educator. You're an educator with what you're doing. And I think, I look at I have grandchildren now, and If you ask my granddaughter, can you dance? Of course she can dance. If I ask her if she can draw, of course she can draw.
Yes.
Can you sing? Of course she can sing. And she will demonstrate it for me. But we get to a point where we start judging ourselves by everybody else around us, which is exactly what you were doing
Totally.
when you decided. I think that's what it sounded like when you
Totally.
didn't
Yep.
have that talent.
Yep.
And so we stop because we think that somebody else has that magic and we don't.
Or we're afraid of doing it badly and that
Yeah.
reflecting on
Yeah.
us. That's the other thing too, right?
So
And it's like
that gets to the whole failure piece, which
failure is learning. Failure is necessary.
yeah,
Nobody starts good. That's what everybody forgets. Like even Da Vinci, it's like, oh wow, he was so great, but he was drawing and he was in the atelier system as a very young child, right? And so even Tiger Woods, it's like, yeah, but look at the videos of him at 5 years old hitting 500 balls a day, right?
exactly.
But nobody starts good at any of this stuff, and we judge ourselves by those who have already put in all of the work, all of the effort. They've learned the things they need to learn. They've mastered those things, and now it just looks effortless. But they have a trail of failed things in their background, whether it's painting, songs, whatever.
Or playing a sport. My grandson
sport.
is playing baseball, and thank goodness he's a very high achiever. But, thank goodness he's being coached by actually a player here at the university who has told him several times, he reminds him that, 30% gets you in the Hall of Fame with batting, right? And that means 70% of the time you're missing it, missing the ball.
I just have to interject on here too. Like I live near Toronto and the Blue Jays just won the American League last night. And so we're so excited to be going back to the World Series for the first time in over 30 years.
Congratulations on that. Thanks. Yeah, that's great. That's right. So I just love this conversation. Failure, I think I talk about it a lot with the students that I'm coaching in entrepreneurship. And it's interesting to me that at some point failure started to become something we personalized instead of associating it with this activity or this experience. And, in my own book, you mentioned yours, which I want to talk about, but I read about an entrepreneurial mindset. And one of the attributes of an entrepreneurial mindset is the willingness to execute past failure. And that's what we're talking about here. And how can we make that choice? You mentioned that you decided to give it a try several times, it sounds like, with things that you didn't know how to do.
Yep.
And could you talk a little bit about that? How do you think about opportunity? How do you recognize opportunity? And how do you decide which ones to pursue and maybe which ones, that you might try and you decide you're going to take a different path?
For me right now, the biggest things that I look at when I'm looking at a couple of the big shifts that I've made was when I decided to go into the self-publishing, and then also with the online teaching with my art academy, and then with the book. And the thing I look at now is it scalable? Because it's, the painting was great, but that was basically being on a hamster wheel that, as soon as you stop running on that wheel, the money stops coming in. If you're not creating new paintings, you're not making any money. And then with doing the limited edition prints, that allowed me to now scale from every painting that I did. We could now, instead of making, $8,000 or $9,000 on the original, which we still do, but now I could do 100 prints at like $1,200 a piece. So there's 120,000. And then same with the online art academy. It's kind of like when I made the decision that I wanted to teach, which was actually because I had a really bad year in 2019 and Graves' disease. I almost died twice during that period where I was literally lying on the gurney. My wife was there with me. We weren't sure if I was going to make it through the next few minutes, but that was a great thing. I got through it. Okay. I'm totally healthy now. But the thing that really came out of there that really kind of changed my life was that, you would think that you would be terrified. You would have all of these kind of negative feelings going through you. The overwhelming that I felt in both those moments was gratitude. It's just, if this is it, I'm not done yet. There's still so much more I want to do. I felt really bad that I knew that was going to be hard on my wife and my boys. But, if just remember thinking, like whoever's up there, whatever's up there, thank you. Thank you for letting me live a life that was way beyond my wildest dreams. And I got to do all of those things I wanted. I got to follow my dreams and be successful. And there was no regret, I thought. And then over the course of that next year, there was one little regret that kept popping up. And that was that I had done my YouTube channel. I'd been doing it for about 8 years. I had about 6,000 followers, but I was doing it as a side hustle, not even a hustle, just as a passion project. I was not monetizing it. I had no desire to monetize it. I just wanted to kind of give back to the art world, which had given me so much. And then while I was sick during that year, wasn't able to paint, I really just started thinking that, you know what? Like I say, I don't want to just crank out more paintings and make more money. I want to be able to change people's lives and let other people experience that feeling that I felt when I wasn't sure if I was going to be here tomorrow. Because most people will tell you that's not how they feel. The regret is overwhelming for a lot of people, even just later in life when they're thinking about the things they didn't do or were afraid to do. And so that's when I made the decision, I'm going to switch my focus to actually teaching and helping other artists. And then it was like, okay, but I need to do this because I'm still married to my wife, the banker. So she's like, if you're giving up the painting and you're going to be taking, less time promoting the prints and everything else, and it's all going to be about teaching, then you need to figure out a way to turn this into a business. And then that's also when I learned that, wow, the online teaching business was growing at an expanding rate, and COVID happened right at this time. So everybody got comfortable with what we're doing here now. And then I realized, the studies show that if people don't pay for something, they really don't value it, that there's a much higher success rate from people who actually invest in the training. And then they're also much more likely to put it into practice. So then it was like, okay, I guess I need to learn all about this online teaching. And then we just crossed $500,000 in sales of my courses this summer, and we're going to hit 6 by the end of the year. And even more importantly, I've already changed the lives of a number of people that are in the program that are actually living their life now and having successful careers as an artist. So, yeah, it's all good.
Wow. That is so amazing. First of all, your enthusiasm, you're in Canada, I'm in Florida. We couldn't be further away.
Yeah.
In North America, but your enthusiasm is reaching me all the way here through this screen. And the gratitude piece is so powerful. I know for my own self, when fear starts to overtake, if I can turn it around and I can think from a gratitude perspective about whatever it is, it really makes a huge difference. And I love hearing you say that. And I know it has not been easy. I know this path has not been easy because learning is hard sometimes. Yeah. It's exciting and it's fun, but it's hard.
It's work.
Yeah, it's work. It's work. And, but, I get this question from students sometimes. They say, everybody tells me to follow my passion, but I don't know what I'm passionate about. So I wonder, Tim, what kind of a response do you give to someone who says, I want to follow my passion. I want to do something. I want to have your kind of energy and your enthusiasm, but I don't know what my passion is.
I have a great answer for that, because it would be the same thing if someone said to you, I want to find my absolute favorite food in the world, but I don't know what that is. And it's like, you got a lot of tasting to do, right? You have to go out and taste everything in the world. And the great thing now with the internet and with YouTube and the technology, I do think I've always thought it was kind of horrible that as kids, we have to decide at 16 or 17 what we're going to take in school and what path we're going to do. But now we don't have to do that anymore. And online learning is so available. So I'd say to people, taste, try things, try everything, and find what is the thing that you just really, we know when we try something that we just can't wait to get to do it again. And then I also think I have a definition of passion too that I think a lot of people don't really get, because a lot of people think, well, I love doing the thing, right? My wife loves golfing. She golfs about 90 rounds a year. She's still a 24 handicap. She just loves playing bad golf. For it to be a passion that I think that you can turn into an actual career or a business, you not only have to love doing the thing, you just have to have an overwhelming, burning desire to be as great as you can possibly be at that. And then you also have to have that work ethic to say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And if you have those, then you can turn it into a career, into a business, whatever. But the only way for people to find the things they love, find their passion, is taste the world. Like it's all out there now.
That's a perfect analogy. I have thought and said something similar to my students, but I've never used the find my favorite food. You got to taste a lot. And I think that's a great way. It's a great way to think about it, a great analogy. So as someone who has tried a lot of different things and built a wide variety of companies along the way and products and services now, what do you think is the hardest thing or what stands in the way of execution? Because a lot of people see opportunities, or at least they think they see an opportunity, and they start to work on it and they think about it and they dream about it, but then they don't get off of ground zero with it. They're still working in a job maybe that they don't love. And I know you did a side hustle, which I think is a really interesting way. And maybe we can talk about that as well. But what kinds of things helped you, and what advice could you give for someone who might be sitting here listening and saying, well, that's all great for you, but I've got this obligation and that, and I've got this problem, I've got that. I don't have the time, or whatever it is. What do you say to somebody like that?
Well, I think the biggest thing too, one of the things that holds people back is just that fear of failure, fear of being judged by their family, by their friends, by their coworkers, whatever. Failure isn't always a good thing, right? So the first thing I like to look at it, like if you're going to be chasing your passion, whatever it is, you're playing the infinite game. And the goal is just to be able to keep playing that game tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So you never want to take risks that will take you out of the game, right? You don't want to mortgage your house and open a pottery barn in Tofino on the hope that this might somehow, be successful. So I say starting in kind of like, you got to start doing stuff in small kind of increments, starting something as a side hustle. And then it's also recognizing, I think so many people buy into this whole thing of the entrepreneur life. And oh my God, I just hate the whole term of passive income, right? People have this dream that they're just going to sit on a beach and the royalties will roll in. And that might happen way down the road. And then the other saying that I don't really like is, if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And it's like, and then people go, well, if it feels like work, I shouldn't have to do it. And I say, if you want to be able to do what you love and make a business out of it, you better be willing, at least in the beginning, to work harder at this than anything you've ever worked at in your life, because that's what it takes. And so I think people don't get that. They buy into, there's a lot of like snake oil salesy stuff out there about, here, watch my video, get these 10 quick tips, and you're going to launch your business and you're going to be making $10,000 in passive income a month. And that's not the reality, right? And then when it doesn't work out, they go to the next thing that someone is touting as this is the latest thing. And so I think part of it is just really like identifying the thing that you really want to do. First of all, is it something you're passionate about? Because if you're not, you might be better off just working another job, because the only thing that makes it worth all of the work to be a successful entrepreneur is you get up every day and do what you love. And so if you haven't figured out what you love, you may be better off working at another job until you find that. But then just knowing that once you've decided that's what you're going to do, as long as you have the passion and you have a work ethic and you have the willingness to learn, success is possible. But it's hard. And I think what happens is people get all excited initially, I'm going to do this thing, and then it gets hard. And then they don't have that kind of success right out of the gate. And so now they're looking for the next thing that's going to be easy. And the next thing and the next thing. And the answer is none of it's easy. it's all hard. So you just got to put your head down and work through the hard until you start to get the success, right? And then success compounds. And then it's kind of like, that's where you have the 10-year overnight success stories, right?
That's exactly right. And I think you hit on the idea of hacks. I'll call them hacks, the shortcuts. And I think you're right. I mean, people, unfortunately, we've fallen into that mindset that there's all these ways we can get around the law of the harvest. I think you have to plant a seed and you have to watch it grow and you have to water it every day and you have to be out there and you have to get the weeds out and all of that. It's there's parts of everything, every kind of job. There was a book written a number of years ago called The E-Myth, and Michael Gerber, I think, was the author, but he talked about the fact that people start businesses to do something they love, and then they realize they have this business side. I had a
It's
former
work.
student. Yeah. But she was a photographer. And I remember the day she came into class and she was crying because she had done the financials and she was like, she was tracking. I made them like track their hours and what they were going to do every day. And she realized that she would only be a photographer for like 20% of the time. 80% of the time, she was sitting with clients. She was selling her product. She was, preparing the photographs for use and just all of that, and she had to figure out how to pay for a space and do the marketing. And so, fortunately, about a year after she graduated, she called me because somebody had agreed to give her space and she was going to be able to afford to open her little studio. But when she was looking at the numbers and all the time and the hours, she realized that you're right. It's not just about doing that thing you love. There's a whole business side to it. And that's true of everything. And I agree. Passive income, it doesn't come easy or
No,
quick.
and it comes at the end when you don't need it anymore,
That's right.
actually.
That's when those people that write the books can write them because they've already done all the work up front.
And the one thing that comes to mind too, I remember there's two qualities that I've read in different studies and books that when they track kind of personality traits, two things that really, really kind of are kind of compass needles about who's going to be successful and who's not. And the one of them is the ability to delay gratification. So, do you want a cookie now or do you want to wait till tomorrow and I'll give you 2 cookies? Like even something as simple as that in children, it actually has an impact down the road. And then the other thing is grit, the ability to fall down, scrape your knees and get up and keep going. And it's like when you put those two things together, doing the hard work now, knowing it's going to pay off later and, getting smacked by reality and kind of having to pick yourself up and doing it, those two things will just, serve you, just keep going. Too many people, I think, and there's too many people out there selling this myth of, start your own business now and take my course and you'll be making $20,000 a month and you'll be sitting on a beach in Nice, sipping on a cocktail. It's like,
it's really interesting. I heard somebody actually just say yesterday, don't go to advice to somebody or what you're doing to somebody who hadn't done it before.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people out there who are experts, quote unquote.
24-year-old life coach.
Yeah, that's right. I get that sometimes from my students. They're going to go right out of college and be a life
start
coach.
Coaching. Well, one of the things I heard recently that I thought was really effective too, I think it was from Alex Hormozi, was about kind of like, if you want to be successful in terms of like as a teacher, whether like commercially, whether it's you're selling courses or you're doing a book or whatever it is, and you want people to buy into it. He said, first, go do the thing that you are purporting to be an expert at. And then secondly, go and help other people achieve the same level of success and then actually become known for that. And then go and then try to create a business around doing that. But we have too many people out there that, they're trying to be a coach and they've never done the thing, never mind successfully coach someone else to actually do it.
And I could tell you my own personal story along that line because I started teaching. I grew up in a family business, so I experienced it, but I started teaching not entrepreneurship, but business strategy without having ever started my own business. And I realized that I didn't have the credibility, at least in my own mind. And I left, took a sabbatical, and I started a technology company. And I learned as much or more in that than I did in my doctoral program. So
For sure. Yeah.
absolutely. And so I feel like it has really given me more credibility in the classroom than I ever could have had I not done that. And since that time, I've been on boards and I've worked with a lot of other companies. My point in saying all that is that it's taken me a lifetime, really, a lot of years, let me put it
Yes.
that
Yeah.
way, to get all that credibility. And I think there's value in every step along the way. They all came together. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you too, that all of those learnings, everything that you learned along the way, it all comes together. And I'm just really interested in hearing a little bit more. Tell us about your school and about your book and some of the things that you're doing now. But before we do that, I just have to ask you, talk to me a little about how you found your creative path with art.
Voice.
Yeah, your creative path with art. I'm just really curious about that. Tell us about what inspired you. I know you wanted to do art, but what inspired you to do the art that you produced?
So the
And
art that I
produced?
do now is very different than what I was doing when I left the police force. So when I first started, and I'm a big believer in like going after information, right? And reading about stuff. So it's kind of like when I decided I wanted to get serious about my art again, it was like, well, what should I paint? That was the very first question. So I kind of researched that and everything came back the same. Paint what you love. And I had two little boys at the time. So I started doing paintings of my boys.
Awesome.
And then I ended up, that was the first painting that I ever did that got into a show and won an award, was a portrait of one of my kids. And then I started doing portraits of friends but just for me painting. And then people wanted to buy those paintings of their kids. And so then I started doing portrait commissions and doing it all on spec and it was again, just friends and family, do you mind if I take your picture? Whenever we were out and it's like, and I'll have it at my show at my house. I did a studio open house. I started doing those. And so they were just done on spec and I loved doing that. And then people started commissioning me to do portraits. And initially it was friends and family and people I knew. So they were very, very kind of open creatively for me to do what I wanted to do. And I just had like you don't like it, you don't buy it policy. So there was no, no fear for them, no cost of entry to get a portrait done of their kids, whatever. But then as I started making that a business though, then it was like, okay, now the client had more input. And I was going outside of, so I reached a point where 2 years after I'd left the police force, I was painting pictures of other people's people the way they wanted me to paint them. And I was painting paintings, not only that I never would have painted, I was painting paintings where I hated going into the studio every day. And I thought, how did this happen? I had a job I really liked. I thought I'm going to chase my passion. Now I got a job I don't like. And at the same time, I had a workshop with Zoltan Szabo, who was one of the art gods of the 20th century, really revolutionized watercolor. And he said to me something that really changed my life. He said to me, Tim, you've got the technical skill to paint anything in a highly representational way, very high realism. And that's actually a valid choice if you decide to do that. But don't let that happen just because you never thought there was more. And then he said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could create your own world on paper or canvas that was unlike anyone else's? And wouldn't it be a shame if we never got to see it because it never even occurred to you to look for it? And that I get teared up.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring.
Because that changed my life. And I left that workshop going, okay, yeah, I'm not like all of the high realism and painting portraits in watercolor is about the highest test of skill that you can get. And so I developed this super high skill level. But now I was presented with, well, what do I want to say with it that's unique? And so what I started doing, and I didn't know that this was an actual path, but this is what I actually tell my students to do. And it makes sense because you see musicians do this all the time, is I started looking for influences. I started looking for other artists whose work just made my jaw drop and where I just went, oh my God, I love that. I would love to be able to paint like that. And then that's what I would do. I would try to kind of examine what's their filter? What's the disconnect between the actual world and the way they paint? Like, what is that thought process? What are the techniques they use? What's the process of starting and finishing a painting that they do? And then I would paint my own subject matter, kind of trying to mimic that until I'd learned enough. And what I wanted to learn out of there was three things. How much do I love the actual process of doing this? How happy am I with the finished product? And what's the public reaction to it? And so over the course of several years, once I decided that I was not going to paint portraits the rest of my life, my wife and I came to an agreement that I would spend half my time painting portraits. The other half I could be, which what I now know, this is called process mode. And this is also where when you're doing this kind of exploration, the very first thing you do is give permission for it to fail, because you're going to have, whenever you're trying something you don't know how to do and you're not good at, failure's a real potential. And so give it permission to fail. That way you're never frustrated and you don't get the lizard brain kind of leering up because now we have fear of failure. But anyways, I was in this mode for about 2 years and my work was all over the map stylistically. And I was painting florals. I was doing portraits, some abstracted portraits, landscapes, total abstracts, just in every style you could imagine. And I was gradually getting closer and closer to kind of the things that I really knew I wanted to do. And then I did the very first painting. It's actually called Forest Window. I still remember that. I don't remember the titles of any of my paintings, but I remember that one. That was the first piece that if I showed you that now and you saw that next to all of the work I've done for the last 15 years, you'd go, oh yes, obviously that's by him. But that was the first one where it was kind of, and I just, when I finished the painting, it was like, wow, that I was in flow state the entire time. I thought it was one of the best paintings I'd ever done. But then the question is, what's the public reaction? Because at the end of the day, if you're doing this as a living, the public needs to love it. And I was actually doing pretty well as an artist at that time. I think that year I did about $28,000 in sales, which, I mean, 80% of artists right now, full-time artists in a recent survey, they make less than $10,000 a year. So making $28,000 a year was pretty good. And I would do $2,000 to $4,000 in sales at a festival. So I took this painting to a festival and it sold in the first 5 minutes of the show. And luckily the couple that bought it said, well, we just got here. We want to walk around. Can we leave it here? And I could have sold that painting like 30 times. Everybody walked into my booth and said, oh, and then they were so disappointed because it was sold, they just left. So I finally wrapped it up because I thought this is costing me sales. And I decided though, I think maybe this is it, because I loved, and that you need to find three things as an artist. Again, you need to love the process. You need to love the finished work and be proud of it. And the public needs to, like, capital L, love it. And so I knew, okay, well, at least the reaction from this one show was very good. So I was asked to enter a couple pieces in a fundraising auction for the Burlington Arts Center. And so I thought, well, let me do 2 pieces in this new style. So I did 2 pieces there. They both sold at auction for over double what I was charging with my work in the galleries. And not only that, I got a call the next day from a woman that was on the board of the auction committee. And she said that she got outbid, or because she wanted it, but she wanted to commission me to do a piece at like my regular gallery prices. And so that was like, okay, I think maybe this is it. And then I just put my head down and painted in this mode. And then I actually took the leap of doing a major show in Toronto that was like the Toronto Art Expo, which was like a $5,000 booth fee, which I'd never done before. And I did $28,000 in sales that weekend. Had the business cards of 10 gallery owners by the end of that festival asking me if I would please consider showing with them. And then I just really never looked back from there.
I love hearing that story because it took you a while to find the right path, but you also, all along the way, even though you're an artist, you were talking about business, and that's probably comes from your wife, but
Yes.
understanding the customer validation process, which is what you're talking about there. And it's not, I mean, every artist that decides they're going to be selling their product for commercial understands they have to do that. And you may have heard of Mikhail now I can't say his name, Csikszentmihalyi, who he's the guy that came up with flow, the idea.
Okay. Yeah.
and Csikszentmihalyi. Sorry, it took me a minute. But he talks about that. There's creativity that we do for ourselves, but it has to be validated. And
otherwise it's just a hobby.
Yeah. And yeah,
I was thinking about that when you were talking about that photographer that realized that you think that being a photographer means you're just taking pictures all the time. And it's like, you can do that, but then you need to have another job to support your hobby. But if you want to make a living out of it, then it is a business and you are an entrepreneur. The funny thing too is that within the creative world, you know, there's a lot of kind of negativity towards like, oh, selling is selling out, and like somehow being successful is a bad thing, and your creativity suffers from it. And I can tell you, my creativity and my integrity suffered when I was a starving artist. When I painted a picture of a poodle with a party hat on its head, you know, as a commission, because I needed the money, right? Like I did a lot of paintings at that time that aren't things that I would be proud of and say, this represents me, but I did it because I needed the money, because I was struggling. And once I became successful, now I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And I think success, rather than somehow kind of impinging on our creativity and artistic integrity, I think success just allows you to have more, because you then have the ability to say no to all of those things that you don't really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so much insight in that. And you've recognized and learned all these things along the way that every entrepreneur learns, regardless of what you're doing. It doesn't have to be art. It can be selling any kind of product or service, and it's all the same. But finding that product or that service that actually satisfies a customer needs is very gratifying as well. So I have to ask you about service, because you now are teaching and you've written a book, and I'd love for you to tell us about your book and sort of how this whole giving back feels at this stage of your career and why you chose to go this path.
Yeah. So the giving back thing, I mean, it's like, first of all, we want to achieve success for ourselves, right? You need to pay the bills. You need to put a roof over your head. You need to look after your family and all of that kind of stuff. And then ideally you get to a point where, you know, you're living a very good life. But after that, just more success, I don't know, just to me anyways, becomes less and less gratifying. Selling one more painting, making more money next year than I did last year. And I had the opportunity to mentor a young artist back in 2017. I guess it was a buddy of mine from the golf course. We're members at a private club in Toronto, and I was golfing.
Your wife can golf, right?
Yeah, we live on a golf community on Georgian Bay, right on the 12th fairway.
Beautiful.
Yeah, living the dream.
Living the dream. That's
and
right.
the one thing I'll say to one of the things I'm proudest of is that, you know, my wife took a huge chance on me for me to quit my job and do that. Now, she had a good job at the time for one of the major banks, so we weren't going to starve. But because of all the decisions we made, we reached a point where she was actually able to leave the bank before she turned 50. And now she helps me with the books. She works kind of part-time doing the business stuff. But yeah, she golfs 80 or 90 rounds a year, and she is living the life that she loves. And I'm so proud that her taking that chance in me paid off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to the question, which was, I'm sorry.
Giving back and serving.
Giving back. So we were at the golf club that we were members at before we moved up here, and people there knew I was an artist, and, you know, but they don't know too much about what I do. So one of my buddies, we were golfing, and he said to me, like, you're an artist, right? I said, yeah. And he said, do you know anybody who does like fine art printing? And I said, yeah, I do. I said, why? He said, well, my daughter's, she's in university right now studying landscape architecture, but she also paints as a hobby. And she did this painting for her grandfather of this scene near their cottage that's of a very recognizable old dam and mill. And he said, like, I think people on the road have expressed interest in getting prints of it. And I said, yeah, we can do that for you. So anyways, he brought her over with the painting. So I explained the process, and I said, listen, we'll do a proof. for you. She wanted my advice on how many. And I said, well, probably 25 is probably a pretty good number. And I can help you with the framing options and all that kind of stuff. So she said, okay. So I said, well, come back in a week and I'll show you the proof. And if you're happy with it, we can go ahead with the prints. So she came back in a week. She loved the proof. And then she said, well, when can I get all 25 prints? And I said, well, you don't have to order them all at once. You can order them as you sell them. She said, no, I've already sold all 25. And that got my attention. But I thought, wow, okay. And then over the course of the next couple of years, and her name is Brooke Cormier. And that's her. You can follow her at Brooke Cormier, but she's got over 1 million followers on social media. She's living in Vienna and just living the dream life of an artist at a level of success far beyond what I ever achieved. But anyways, over the course of the next couple of years, while she was still in school, she was doing art as a bit of a side hustle. So we did a couple other little small print jobs for her. And then she graduated, and then I was golfing with her dad, and I could tell something was weighing on his mind. And he said, like, we talked to Brooke last night. And I'm like, oh, how is she doing? He said, well, I can tell you one thing. She doesn't want to be a landscape architect. She wants to be an artist. And he was just staring right through me and not happy. And, you could just, if there was a thought bubble over his head, it would be, and it's all your fault. And then he said, like, honestly, what do you think? And I said, well, she's really impressed me. First of all, she's got the passion. I could tell that she had the fire in her belly. Whenever we talked, he would actually have to come over sometimes and said, leave Tim alone. Like, he doesn't want to talk about art anymore. But she was always just picking my brains about art, about the business of being an artist. And I could tell that, and she'd only ever had like high school art classes, but she was like pretty good. She was like, I'm sure every high school, every year in the graduating class, there's 1, 2, or 3 artists who are about the same level that she was at that time. Right. And by that time, I knew it wasn't about talent. It was about hard work. So I said to him, you know what? Like, she's living at home right now. She doesn't have any debt. If she's going to take a chance at this is probably the perfect time, because there's no jeopardy if it doesn't work out. She can always go back to being a landscape architect. And I was already, I had my YouTube channel going. And so this just came off the top of my head. I said, if she wants to, I'd be willing to mentor her as long as we record all of our sessions, and I can put it up on my YouTube channel so that other people can share that same level of learning, right? And can experience, her experiences and kind of learn from that process. And so she agreed to do that. And yeah, so we started that. That was in 2017. I remember it took me 6 years until I made over $30,000 from my art. She made over $30,000 in her first year as an artist. And by the second year, things were taken off. And like now people, when I tell people that, they're like, Brooke Cormier? I was like, I mentored Brooke Cormier. But when I was lying there on the gurneys and, again, when wasn't sure if I was going to make it. And during that year, I was thinking back, and that was one of the things that I was most proud of in my life as well, was being able to change her life and know that she was now going on to lead the life that she dreamed of. And so that was really and I knew that I had the validation that, I guess I know what I'm talking about here. Right. And then I've since there's another one of my students, Emily Valentine. I'll just put that out there because anybody who follows social media and art will know her. She's had the same kind of success as Brooke. And she actually started out watching the YouTube videos of me and Brooke when she was at school studying to be a veterinarian, just thinking, oh my God, could you imagine? That could never be me because I'm not talented enough. And then after, the 20th video of mine on YouTube where I said, it's not about talent, it's about hard work, she decided to give it a try. She was one of the first students that joined my art academy. And now she is just killing it. And that's what really, that makes me feel better than, we're having an online sale coming up of my work in 2 weeks. And usually we'll do like 40,000 in sales in a weekend, which is great. That doesn't make me feel as good as when seeing someone like that, where you've changed their lives and now that they're going on to live their dream life. It just feels so good.
Great story. And what a great feeling. And I agree with you. I think it's the reward from giving back. I mean,
Yeah.
that is so but you have to get that. You have to get to that point.
Yes.
I
And
mean-
karma is practical too. I'm a big believer. Gary Vaynerchuk was the first person I ever heard say that. Is it karma is practical?
It is.
Doing good things, you'll get always trying to give more than you get, and doing good things just because will reward you in the end way more than always trying to get more than you give and always having the what's in it for me kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I think the universe is practical in terms of karma, that good things get
I think that's a
rewarded.
great saying as well. So I could talk all day, Tim, but
I could.
well, this has just been a delight. There's so many. We may just have to have you back, or maybe
I'll
we
be
need
there.
to get some of your students on the podcast at some point. But it's great. This story is just amazing and so inspiring. And whether you're an artist or whether you're an entrepreneur of a different type, I think there's so many lessons in all of this. But before we go, I would like to ask you, I always ask my guests if they had one piece of advice that they would give to somebody, an aspiring entrepreneur, or maybe advice you wish you had gotten back when you decided to take the leap into business ownership. What would that one piece of advice? We've gotten a lot of great advice already, but if there was one, what would that be?
Don't make the mistake that most people make, which is giving up too soon. Giving up too soon and just coming to the realization that, I guess I just don't have what it takes, or I don't have the skill, or I don't have the knowledge, or whatever, and they give up because it's hard. And because they're told that it's going to be easy, right? By people out there who just want their money so that to buy their course or buy their book or whatever. But it's like, you have to just put your head down and persevere through it. That I wish I knew that back then. And it's funny. My parents told me that. I grew up hearing that, but I just really didn't believe it. I just really kind of thought that, no, talent is something that you either have or don't have. And most people, you see a lot of people that they start something and it gets tough, and then they just try something else and it gets tough, and it all gets tough. But if anyone else has ever gone through it and made a success of it, you can too. Right. And so it's just, you need to learn, first of all, the skills you need to learn, the knowledge you need to learn. Then you need to learn what you need to do in what order. And then you just need to do it, and just have the faith that, again, it will happen. Not tonight, not next week, might not be next year. If most of you, here's one other thing I will say that is somewhat kind of reassuring, is that most of your competition will give up.
Yeah. I've heard somebody say it's so easy to succeed because so few people are trying. It's not easy. It's hard work.
It's hard.
Let's say there's lots of room to succeed.
Oh, of course.
Out there.
Yeah.
One of the things I love in this story, and I would add to, I love your advice. And I think the advice I would give for anybody listening is to find a mentor like Tim Packer, who's been there and done that, and just bug the heck out of them, right? Until you get what you need. And that's exactly what many young artists have done. And I applaud you, Tim. Could you tell our audience where they can find your academy? Tell us about your book and where they can find out all your art and everything about you.
Okay. So for my art academy, it's www.timpackerartacademy.com. So if you go there, you can actually get 5 free chapters of my book. And I think I've got 38 chapters in the book, but I've picked the 5 that I think probably have the most impact. So if they go to my website, right on the homepage, you can just put in your email and we'll email you a PDF of the 5 free chapters. And then I also have a number of courses there, as well as my mastermind program, which I call the Hungry Artist Community, which is a bit of a play on the starving artist, but also it's like, as you can tell, I'm still hungry. I'm hungry for more knowledge, hungry to have more impact, hungry for more success. And I really believe that's an important thing, because once you reach a level of where you no longer need money to put your life together, then it's just a matter of how hungry are you for the next thing. So anyways, that's my art academy's there, the courses, and in the Hungry Artist Community, they not only get all my courses, but I do a weekly live Zoom call with my students where I'll critique their work, answer questions, and offer coaching advice. And then if they're interested in seeing my work, they can see that at timpacker.com. And so that's where you can see all my limited edition prints and the odd original. I'm not painting nearly as much as I used to. So I used to be filled with originals. Right now, I've got 3 in my studio, and those are the only 3 that are available right now. They aren't even on my website yet.
You're having fun. Life is fun, isn't it?
Can you tell?
I love it. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I'm so excited to check out all your work, and I hope our audience will as well. And
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Stay in touch with you. Thank you,
okay.
Tim.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The In Factor. I hope you were as inspired by Tim Packer's story as I was. His journey is a reminder that it's never too late to follow your dream, and that with the right strategy, your passion can become a thriving business. If this conversation spoke to you, please share it with someone who might benefit from Tim's insights. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow The In Factor and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn for more stories, updates, and behind-the-scene content. You can also explore my books and other resources, including tools to help you build your own entrepreneurial mindset on our website at Dr. Rebecca White. That's drrebeccawhite.com. And don't forget about InFactor Plus. I would love for you to check it out. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to find your guide and go after the life that you imagine.